Y'all, adulting is difficult. Growing is difficult. Self-work, self-development, all of these things, they are not easy. But I am determined to do it all with ease. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Igho. Welcome back to Igho Initiative, where we create self-care systems to help us live our best lives and support our communities without sacrificing our health. If this is your first time on my channel, again, my name is Igho. I am a poet, speaker, community educator, wellness consultant, owner of this platform, Igho Initiative. My chief aim is really to be an example and proof of the possibility of prioritizing your wellness on a daily basis and what it looks like to do so. If you have been here for some time now, welcome back to another Wellness Wednesday chat. Today I'm going to be talking about the cycle of development. It's actually going to be a series, and today is just kind of the intro of what we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks. Y'all, adulting is difficult. Growing is difficult. Self-work, self-development, all of these things, they are not easy. But I am determined to do it all with ease. I've been talking to folks about adulting and self-work and self-development, and it sounds like it's very exhausting to folks to do. And sometimes I actually get into that habit of feeling like it's exhausting or thinking that it's exhausting. And so I wanted to start the series off with the idea that self-work, self-development, all these things, yes, it can be difficult, it can be hard work, but it shouldn't be another thing that burns you out. It shouldn't be another thing that is a stressor for you. And so I wanted to share some tips to support you with moving through your self-work or self-development journey, and what are some things that you need to have in place in order to support you so that you can avoid burnout in this space. Because we can definitely get into the trap of hiring different coaches and purchasing workshops and master classes. It could start to get overwhelming. So I want to make sure that you are getting a good return on your investment and you're not stuck in the hamster wheel of self-development and burnout because you're trying to grow and heal yourself. I want to talk a little bit about what it looks like to manage your expectations or manage your growth, so to speak, as you are moving through different areas of your self-development, as you're learning new things, as you are unlearning certain things. What does it look like to do it in a way that is healthy, a way that isn't exhausting, a way that doesn't burn you out? So I thought about this topic when I was speaking to a friend. I was talking about my current support team, how it is filled with my spiritual counselors, my coach, my sisters, my friends, and all of these actual people that I go to for different things that support me in my day-to-day life, my wellness journey, my spiritual life. And the response I got was kind of like, wow, that seems like a lot. But really, it's really important for you to be intentional about not doing it on your own. You can't do it on your own. There's a scripture that says not to lean on your own understanding, and another one that talks about do nothing without getting counsel. I'm paraphrasing a lot of scriptures, but I say all that to say you can't do this by yourself. So if you are assuming that you can just learn all these things, you can mix and match and patch together all of these workshops and inspiration off of Instagram and then kind of patchwork your healing process by yourself. You won't feel so exhausted if you weren't trying to do it all by yourself. If you were able to develop an actual team, whether it be a therapist, a trainer, if you are working on physical like body goals, if you're courting somebody and you're approving somebody and you're looking to get married, you want to look for a marriage counselor. Depending on what your goal is, figure out who is an expert in this field, who's actually living proof of this, and how can they be on my team? How can I invest in myself and in them to be a part of my team so that they can support me in whatever healing journey or whatever growth or development journey that you are embarking on. Self-work, self-development, growth. I'm using all these terms interchangeably. I'm throwing a blanket general statement over them because they're kind of all one in the same in terms of the suggestion and the tips that I'm offering. I know there's a little bit of nuances in between some of these things, but you'll hear me say these terms interchangeably. So I want to offer two things in terms of making sure that your journey doesn't feel exhausting. And if it does start to feel exhausting, then you know that you need to regroup and think about these two things. So one, do you have a system in place for how you are going through this process? And two, how you're actually learning, how you're actually putting in and implementing the things that you are learning. So I'm going to match that with being a good student. Say what you will about higher education, but the level of discipline that you learn from being in that process, and I say that because I was very anti higher education, to be honest, and here I am, just graduated, now thinking about my master's degree. So I get it. However, the level of discipline that you gain from that experience and going through that is honestly, it's just another level, especially if you are intentional about it and you're doing it the right way for the right reasons. And if you let it really cultivate the spirit of discipline in you, and if you're able to take that with you into the rest of your life, you'll definitely start to see some of those things as well. And I'm talking discipline in a more of the day-to-day life basis. Spiritual discipline is a whole different thing. I think I'm going to touch on that later on in the series as well. Being a good student is really, really important for life in general, not just when it comes to school. However, there's certain things that you have to learn about what type of student that you are in order for you to actually learn certain things. If you don't realize what type of student you are, then you might not be learning in the ways that you need to that'll actually make things resonate or stick or actually work out for you. So it's really important to understand what kind of student you are. So again, the two things I want to offer when it comes to self-development work and not feeling burnout from it and making sure that you are continuously growing is to, one, have a system in place, and two, understand what type of student you are. I'm going to talk about the systems later on in the series. I actually did a video on Instagram a while back, I think about a year ago to be honest, about the 5 systems you need in order to prioritize your wellness. I'm going to be touching on those systems throughout this series. However, today I want to talk about understanding what type of learner or student you are. So I'm going to give you 4 tips for being a good student of life and your self-work so that you are getting what you need to get out of it, learning what you need to learn, and learning what you need to unlearn without feeling burnt out. The first tip I mentioned a little bit earlier is to figure out your learning style. So there are different learning styles. I know there's an auditory learner who you learn by listening to things. I probably should explain these with an example. So say you want to learn how to cook a specific dish. An auditory learner is someone who I can just tell you the recipe and you just listen to me as you make the foods. There are visual learners, someone who needs to see a video of me going through the recipe and making the food. It's helpful for visual learners to watch videos, for instance, or to actually read a physical book. My apologies, that's actually a different type of learner. So the reader or writer learner is someone who best retains information if they are reading something like a book or some slides and are able to write down and take notes off of the information that they're learning. That helps them retain information. So with the example of cooking, they would prefer to just read the recipe off of a recipe book or if they wrote the recipe down themselves. Then there is kinesthetic learning. People essentially who need practical learning. So a kinesthetic learner is someone who needs to be with me. I'm talking to them or as they're doing each step of the recipe basically. Or I say, and now we're going to stir the pot or whatever, and they have to stir the pot with me for them to fully grasp and understand what is happening. And so those are the different types of learners, and I'm sure there are learners who need a mix of both. I know that I'm a kinesthetic and a visual learner. Auditory is cool, but you kind of lose me sometimes and I lose focus. So I have to be listening, watching something, and really that comes down to being a kinesthetic learner. To be honest, I have to be able to do it as well. And then there's also understanding your study, like how things actually resonate with you. So I understand that I can learn in that way, but I also need to be able to have a conversation about it. I realized that when I was in classes, the only way that I would grasp information is if I was asking questions, if I was engaged in conversation with the professor, with my fellow classmates in the classroom. That is almost always the only way that I would be able to retain stuff. And when it came to studying, I did the cue cards again because I'm a visual learner. I need to see things, write it down. But what ultimately would help me remember when it came to taking tests and exams and stuff would be that those conversations that I had in classrooms. And so I understand fundamentally those are the steps it takes for me to learn something, to fully understand it, to grasp it, and be able to remember it, retain it, and regurgitate it. So you have to understand what type of learner you are from start to finish. Are you someone who is an auditory learner, but when it comes to studying, you are actually like more so visual in order to retain that information? So understanding what type of learner you are is the first tip to being a good student of your self-work or self-development journey. The next tip is to plan out what exactly you are working on. Of course, there's going to be some type of tip on planning because hello, the reason why we start to get burnt out with a lot of self-development or wellness work or self-work and all of these things is because we're trying to do everything all at once. We're trying to heal every part of our body. We're trying to heal every part of our minds. We're trying to grow in all different directions, and that's just not how life works. Growth is not an easy thing. Definitely is not an easy thing, and so it's really important that you're focusing on one thing at a time for a season, so to speak. There's a scripture that talks about there's a season for everything. So really pay attention to the fact that you shouldn't be trying to grow in multiple aspects at once. You should focus on one thing at a time. And when you focus on that one thing, then you need to make a plan for what it looks like to work on that one thing. So, okay, you realize that you procrastinate a lot. That is kind of like a general thing. Do you procrastinate in all areas of your life, or is it one area? And so if you focus on one area, maybe you're procrastinating on your work. And so maybe you focus on what is it exactly about work that makes me want to procrastinate, or what am I trying to avoid, so to speak? And then you kind of narrow it down so that you're just focusing on the one thing as opposed to like this big thing or multiple things. Because if you focus on the big thing, it kind of feels overwhelming, and that's when the burnout starts to come through. And so you want to make sure that you narrow down what you want to work on, and then make a plan for what it looks like to work on it. Are you going to monitor yourself on a daily basis? Like, am I getting my tasks done? What are the things that are distracting me? Think about all of those steps that you need to plan out. That is another tip for being a good student of your self-work. The third tip is to make time. It's great to realize what you need to work on, but if you don't make time to work on it and you let other things kind of get in the way because there's just so much to do, then you'll never grow in that regard. And so you need to make time. No matter how busy you are, you will make time for the things that are important to you. So if this goal, if this thing that you want to grow through is important enough for you, you will make time for it. And you have to be intentional about that time, making sure that it's consistent enough for you to see your growth through. So again, back to the procrastination example, if procrastination is the thing that you want to work on, you have to make time to actually reflect on, okay, did I complete my tasks today? Did I do what I said I was going to do? What were my distractions? Make time to monitor those things. Make time to actually do your work. If you figured out that you're the type of learner who needs to take breaks in between certain tasks, then make time to focus on, okay, this is my time to take a break, and this is my time to work. So really figure out what your timing is going to look like through your growth process. The fourth and final tip is to get some support and accountability. This is kind of flowing into one of the systems I'm going to be talking about in the next few weeks, but like I mentioned earlier, I have a whole supports team that I have invested in over the years, that I've proved over the years, that I've figured out, okay, these are the people who I want to learn from because they have shown me evidence of being either where I need to be or where I'm headed, or just an example of what's important to me and how I would like to grow in a specific area. So for me, again, I have a coach, I have spiritual counselors, I have a physical trainer, I have my sisters who I talk to about certain things, I have my friends who I talk to about certain things. And so being able to have pockets of people who are on your support team that you can reach out to for certain things, that can call you out on your stuff, that can remind you of the goals that you set and the things that you said you were going to do. All of those people are really important for you to figure out who exactly you need and what that relationship is going to look like, how often you're going to converse with them, how often you're going to check in, and et cetera, et cetera. So those are really important for you to be a good student, because in the traditional educational sense, your support team, quote unquote, is like your professors. They hold you accountable because they give you assignments to do, and then they give you feedback on those assignments, or you have your program advisor or something like that, and then you have the actual students who might be closer with some students who you study together with, all of those things. So think about what that looks like for your self-work journey. So who is your professor? Who are you checking in with? Who's offering you feedback? Who are your peers who you're able to study with and be like, hey, I'm working on this thing. How are you doing with this assignment, etc., etc. So making sure that you have some support and accountability. And all of these things start with you. You have to be the one who takes that first step. I have had a mentor in the past who had seen me perform one time and was just like, I would love to support you. And it became like a informal mentorship relationship, but that almost rarely happens. So you have to be able to step out of whatever comfort zone you're sitting in and make sure that you reach out to the people that you need for support and be ready to invest, whether it's time, money, energy, into those people, because they are going to be pouring into you. You need to make sure that you are ready to invest in that type of support. To recap, the 4 tips for being a good student or learner in your self-work, self-development journey is 1, to figure out what type of learner or student that you are. I'm sure there's tests that you can take for you to figure out what type of learner that you are, like little questionnaires that you can answer, and helps provide you with what type of learner that you are. Understand what that looks like. And then the next is to plan out what exactly you need to work on and make sure that you narrow it down, get really, really specific so that you are not overwhelmed. Once you worked on the one thing, you've gotten good at it, you got a good, consistent, it's part of your system, it's part of your routine, then you can move on to the next thing. The 3rd tip is to make time. You make time for what is important to you. It doesn't matter what is on your plate. Everybody is busy, quote unquote. Everybody's busy being busy. Everybody has multiple hats that they wear in this day and age. So if it's important enough to you, you will make time for it. And the 4th tip is to get some support and accountability and be ready to invest in them. Whatever support you need to be able to recognize that you need that support. You need to be able to reach out to those people and be ready to invest time, money, energy, effort into that relationship, whatever that looks like. So stay tuned for the rest of the series. I hope this was valuable. I hope this supported you. If you have any other tips for self-work and things that have worked out for you, or if you have any further questions on things that I've touched on, be sure to leave them in the comments below. And if you like what you heard, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. And of course, if you just want to be a part of the tribe, all you got to do is subscribe. Make sure that you are staying hydrated, and I'll talk to y'all real soon. Peace and love.